To anyone that complains about ordeals being too hard or taking too long, please read this comment. Alright, you may be confused, so the definition of ordeal, a very unpleasant and prolonged experience. The ordeal of having to give evidence. Okay, weird example. But this is a very interesting kind of outlook of, the current ordeal situation. I think, yeah, we have talked about some ordeal challenges being a little bit too tedious, like considering like the Spore mine and, breaking out of grabs. There's a few ordeals that can be a little bit weird. I think, honestly, yeah, this is a fair point. The definition does kind of stick to some of these challenges, but some of the PvP challenges don't really feel like actual ordeals. Like it's less about unpleasant and prolonged and more about like tedious and random. You know what I mean? For PvP at least. But still, to be honest, I think I could use some more PvP experience. Maybe I will try my best to kind of stack up some PvP ordeals one day and see, the real experience of, chasing the challenges in PvP. Let me know in the comments if you actually have experience with that. I know I have a fair amount of PvPers here and there. People like to just, pop in to PvP and then, I think it's a pretty nice side, basically a side thing you can do along with operations. But when the game came out, I did mainly dedicate myself to PvP quite a bit, and it is unfortunate that some of those PvP challenges, or maybe even all of them, they don't count. And to be completely honest, even if they counted, I still don't think I would even be halfway to some of those PvP ordeals, even with like 100 hours in PvP or something crazy. It's very interesting of how to approach some of the PvP ordeals, like the multi-grenades. I think certain grenades might be kind of good at doing it. Like, I mean, maybe stick a melta down somewhere. But to be frank, I think people kind of expect meltas now. So people might be avoiding, those shiny lights on the ground. But yeah, the assault class can drop the meltas on people. Maybe that's a good way to get that ordeal done. But yeah, still, this is interesting. A very unpleasant and prolonged experience. I think the definition is pretty close. I mean, if it said a challenge, like prolonged challenge, that would make sense. But, I mean, experience is fair enough. But yeah, we're going to jump into some comments. Let's see people react to this. To anyone who complains about ordeals being too hard, I guess this is kind of a, maybe a shot at them, people who are complaining about ordeals. Kind of a spicy way to start the post here. Yeah, but some of the PvP ones are really dumb and require nearly perfect conditions. Only PvE one that really grinds my gears is the Escape the Terminator's grab. I've only seen that attack once in-game. Hard to complete an ordeal if the situation never happens. That said, I finished the 3 trees I care about, only had to dip into PvP a little bit for the easy ordeals. Okay, well, that's interesting. They at least got some PvP ordeals done before the Terminator grab. The Terminator grab ordeals definitely, yeah, that is the definition of ordeal. That is a lore-accurate ordeal right there with the Terminator grab as far as an unpleasant experience. The only time I've ever been grabbed by a Terminator grab is when I went out of my way to try to farm them for a video to see if that, like, worked at all. And it did, but, like, the reason it does is because you really don't get grabbed otherwise. As soon as I see a Terminator, I don't want to give them time to grab me. They are very dangerous. I mean, I guess at the very least you could jump into lower difficulties maybe, but then you wouldn't see as many Terminators. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a balance issue there for Terminator grabs. We just don't see the grabs enough for that ordeal to really be worth chasing. But I still think it's, definitely an interesting situation we have here with the PvP ordeals. There are some easy ones for sure, but I understand where those challenging, those, what is it, unpleasant and prolonged experience. Yeah, most of the PvP ordeals feel a little bit more tedious than unpleasant. I mean, what's unpleasant about throwing a grenade? There's also a reason they use the word ordeal and not chores, mostly because it sounds epic and heavy metal. This is a game, nobody's begging for an unfun experience. This would be like if Activision flashbanged you IRL in Call of Duty and blamed you because you knew you were buying Warzone. What did you expect? Okay, this is a wild example, But considering we were talking about PvP a little bit before in this video, I think, you know, it is worth it to consider we are getting flashbanged IRL when you are playing PvP, because the shock grenades, the flash effect on that is absolutely insane. But ultimately, this is a wild example to use in this case. They use the word ordeal and not chore. I do think ordeal, honestly, I think ordeal works. You know what I mean? I do think some of those ordeal challenges can be a little bit unpleasant, 100%. The devs need feedback. Yes, they are literally ordeals, but the game, first and foremost, is meant to be fun in order to generate profit. Nobody's clamoring at the idea of shooting purposely at a wall or some such scenario. I'm not too sure what they mean about that. But the fun in order to generate profit is kind of interesting. I'm not too sure if the game was like more fun. I think the game's pretty much peak fun at the moment. Like, there has to be a certain challenge, and if the game is too easy, it would be boring, and then also wouldn't be fun. And yeah, I think ordeals do a good job at keeping the balance more on the challenge side. But also, with that said, even if the game was like peak fun, like it was the most fun ever, and you know, all of that, I'm not even too sure they would sell more skins. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think the game came out and it was good, and that's why they sold a lot of games on launch. And then, yeah, we just had some patches to kind of make the game better, which I guess, yeah, overall makes the game more fun. I agree, but there has to be some sort of challenge in order to keep us engaged. Especially in a game like this, where, you know, you see Tyranids invading, and, you know, they're invading full worlds and stuff. It would be kind of weird if you could just, like, I don't know, if there wasn't any sort of challenge, you could just walk through the game without even, like, you know, thinking much. I think right now is a pretty good, I think the ordeals right now, I think they're in a pretty good spot. I just honestly think there's maybe like one or two that can be adjusted. And yeah, that's easy enough for them to patch in. It's not like they haven't reworked perks or reworked things before. They've also adjusted some of the PvP ordeals. And I do think they could, honestly, I think some of the PvP ordeals would be easier to get if people had more fun in PvP. But I think, honestly, when it comes to fun in operations and fun in PvP, the one thing that really separates the two is the fact that operations and, you know, PvE weaponry and everything like that received a lot more updates. So I think PvP is at a point where it's like, it is fun, but for people who enjoy PvP, they've already played a lot of it, you know what I mean? So I think PvP honestly just needs some sort of extra spice. It really does. Making players play the game in ways they literally never would otherwise isn't unpleasant or prolonged, it's just bad design. Case in point, Spore mines. Nobody's ever going to go out of their way to knock them into other enemies. Not only is it insanely risky, as Spore mines are super inconsistent, but you can just shoot them and achieve the same result, if not better. I mean, I think this is an interesting point. I do think meleeing Spore mines is kind of flashy. I do think if a sniper can pull that off, it's kind of like more power to them, you know what I mean? But yeah, the same result, that's a fair point, because it is, I think if you melee Spore mines, maybe you should get like a better benefit or something, or at the very least, we should be able to like parry Spore mines. But I don't know, that's kind of interesting. I think the Terminator grab's a better example, because nobody wants to get grabbed by Terminator. There's no reason to just get grabbed. Meleeing Spore mines, that could be like, what if you don't have any ammo, you know? Like, if hitting Tyranids with Venom Cannon shots is an ordeal, then why isn't hitting Tyranids with Spore mine explosions an ordeal? Oh yeah, I guess he's just saying why doesn't just shooting them work for an ordeal? The hitting cannons with Venom Cannon shots. Hitting Tyranids with Venom Cannon shots, sorry, is an ordeal. I never seen that ordeal. I'm not too sure what they're referring to here. Oh, and absorbing damage with Heavy's Iron Halo. That one is way too long. I maxed out the Heavy stance kills ordeal long ago, yet the Iron Halo one is still barely over 7,000. Oh, well, that's interesting. This is the first time I've heard of that. Yeah, maybe the fact that I haven't seen the, you know, the Iron Halo shield damage ordeals because I never really noticed it pop up. I don't know, that's interesting. I gotta check that. I do like playing Heavy a lot. And I've been playing a lot of Heavy on PC, and it's very fun doing stomps and everything. But yeah, I'm also trying to level up my Prestige characters on console as well. Or sorry, I'm trying to level up my classes on console as well, because, I mean, ultimately I will have Horde mode on PC and console, so yeah, I definitely need, you know, leveled up characters for that. That's gonna be very fun. I can't wait for that. But okay. Oh, also, do you think we're gonna get Horde mode ordeals? Because if so, That would be interesting. Also, it might be easier to do some ordeals in horde mode as well. So we will see. We will see. But I think this person brings up interesting points as far as, you know, literally never would do isn't unpleasant. I see what they kind of mean by that. But I do kind of understand where some of these, I think the grind, like as far as the grind goes, it can definitely feel a little unpleasant to get that close to spore mines that often. I can kind of see, you know, that point of view. The Iron Halo, I'm not too sure about that one. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, I feel like they bring up some good points, but I still think the devs are aiming towards something unpleasant, and I still think they're like pretty much hitting, you know, that spot. But yeah, I do think there's some things that can be tweaked 100%. There are some ordeals, like honestly, is just blocking damage with the Iron Halo, is that really unpleasant? If it, you know, otherwise it's really the grind. It's really the grind that makes it unpleasant in a sense. I really hope they add some ordeals and some more cosmetics through them. That would definitely be cool. And obviously the next update is going to be a good opportunity to do that. But hey, overall, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this conversation. Should ordeals be unpleasant? Should they be more fun? You know, regardless, I think just, you know, kind of playing the game as you are, you know, don't go out of your way to just get grabbed by Terminators. Do what you want, because that's when you're going to have fun. If you're going to sit there in an operation and just keep reloading it over and over just to get grabbed by Terminators, if that's not fun, then don't do it. You know what I mean? Ultimately, that's not something I would enjoy. So if I'd never complete that ordeal, that's just, you know, that's just going to be the reality of it ultimately. But hey, yeah, definitely let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this subject. Thanks for watching.